Hi guys, Stephen here, back with another video. This time it's titled, Did Tavistock Create the Beatles? Is Paul dead? First off, I just want to tell you, I'm a big fan of the Beatles, of their music. I'm 31 years old. My dad, he's 68. My dad who was born in 1953. He grew up on the Beatles. He was a huge Beatles fan, and that was his group. And with Beatlemania, which was from about, I don't know, 1962 up until, what was it, when they broke up, was in 1970. Beatlemania, that was part of his, it was his formative years, growing up, all from when he was started from when he was about 9, and then up until he was about 16. My dad, he turned me on to some of their music when I was a kid. It's funny. First, when I was about 5 or 6, I remember he would play me some tracks from the Monkees. And Monkees were, the Monkees. That was a group that was obviously, I think they were created around. They started in 1965, and they were a group, and it was quite. With the Monkees, it was quite transparent. It was that they were kind of manufactured. It was a group that other people wrote their songs. They had songwriters, professional songwriters, write the songs for them. And there was a group they got together through. It was like an audition process. But the Monkees, they still had a few good hits. I mean, I remember my dad playing them. Those records. I'm a Believer. Is it Daydream Believer? One or two others that are they're not bad songs. And I think for a 5-year-old, 6-year-old kid, that was the kind of songs. I'm better off hearing those songs when I'm that age. My dad probably didn't want me to hear songs from the Beatles when there's a lot of this, in their songs. There's, sometimes there's, sexual innuendos, there's references to drugs. So I think, my dad was sensible in just playing me songs on the Monkees when I was about 5 or 6 and not songs from the Beatles. But getting back to the Beatles, I think I was about maybe 9 or 10 when I first started hearing their music. And for me, it was probably Penny Lane was the song that I really liked. Penny Lane was the song that I would always get out my dad's CD. I think he had it was like the compilation of all the number one hits the Beatles had, and I would always play that song Penny Lane. I really liked that one. But the Beatles, though, were a group. I mean, I was about 17, 18, and I really started getting into the Beatles. I started reading a lot of the books. My dad has a lot of books on the Beatles, and I started reading them. And then I started watching a lot of, just downloading a lot of their songs on my MP3 player. And then I was just watching a lot of their performances on YouTube. And then I remember watching the Anthology documentary, and I really got into the Beatles at that point. I mean, I'm mostly into like rap, R&B type of music, but I was really into the Beatles at that point. I was really into their music, probably more than anything else. I mean, I got to a point when I was about 18, and and I grew my hair out at the Beatles. I was trying to rock the mop top. That's how much I really got into the Beatles. And there's something about that. Just their music. I mean, it's hard. You'd be pressed hard to find a Beatles song that you'd be like, nah, that's shit. I'm not I'm not feeling that one. It's just so many brilliant songs that those guys had. But the thing about it, I mean, with the Beatles is, I mean, I'm doing this video about them, and I'd come across some stuff like these conspiracy theories to do with the Beatles, and it was through this guy by the name of Mike Williams. He's a New York guy from New Yorker. He's about 62 years old. But this guy, I mean, he seems like a nice guy, just normal guy, not very articulate guy, not like a guy. When you think of conspiracy theories and you think like, oh, the Alex Jones, the Rant and the Raven, like the tinfoil hat, blah blah blah. He seems like like just a normal guy, and he sounds like he really does know what he's talking about. Mike Williams, the thing about Mike Williams, he goes all the way with this. He really does believe it was all. His theories are that really the Beatles, he believes that they didn't. I think on the from like 1962, 1966, that they didn't write any of their own stuff. That was every song that they had, every song that they put on an album. It wasn't really a Lennon/McCartney composition. It was other professional songwriters. They were writing the songs for them, and also with this guy Mike. Mike really does believe that Paul McCartney died in 1966. He believes this, and he believes that, I guess, that they killed him and they replaced him, and then this guy, they trained up this guy to speak like Paul, to do all the mannerisms, talk like Paul, sing like Paul, and this was their new guy to be Paul McCartney. It was, and he believes all this, and he's done a lot of research on this. He's been doing research for about 5 years on this, and he really, and this is the thing though. I I'm just gonna make it clear now. I'm not sold on this theory about Paul McCartney dying in 1966 and being replaced. No, I don't buy that. But I can believe though that maybe the Beatles had a lot of help though when it came to the songwriting. And the not necessarily that they had all these writers writing these songs for them, but they were making it out like as if it was Lennon and McCartney writing all the songs. But I believe that it's possible that there was other people writing, like co-writers on these tracks. But it was obviously that that didn't come up, on the credits. It was like, these guys are, proper. They were the proper. These professional songwriters were proper ghostwriters because they didn't get the credit. But but the thing is, with this guy Mike, Mike, he is a bit out there with some of the stuff. Overall on a personal level, seems like a nice guy, but I can't fully buy into everything that he says about the Beatles and all these these theories. For one, Mike, in his mind, Mike was saying that he believed that all these guys were in a mind control program. And he even believes, first off, he says that he's pretty sure that it goes back to the days from Hamburg, which was maybe around, I think, 1960, 1961. That could be maybe that was the case. When it came to people that, pie up people in the record industry, that they were, at that point, Beatles, they were on these people's radars. I don't know, but Mike goes all the way with this though, because Mike thinks that they were, groomed in these mind control programs, like from a young age when they were young kids. And for me, I just find it hard to believe that 4 boys from a working class like city like Liverpool were in these mind control programs. I just have a hard time believing that, from what I've seen about the Beatles from their childhood when they were growing up, they all just kind of just seem to have a normal childhood, I know it's the exception you could say would be John Lennon. John Lennon, his dad was never around. His mum, I think, was an off-duty police officer, ran her over when I think he was just a young boy. Was he like 8 or 9 or something? But, I think, yeah, McCartney, his mum died when he was, I think, a teenager. But I think before that, overall, just normal childhood, normal happy childhood. And I think it was the same with George. And maybe did Ringo have a stepdad? But you didn't hear anything too bad or too controversial about these guys. And I'm with the exception of Lennon, maybe, but it didn't seem like any of their parents, their moms, their dads seemed like this pushy type. You know what I mean? Like what you hear, these showbiz parents. And I think if that was the case, you would see you would have seen photos of their parents. You would have seen them a lot more when you look back at all these photos in these books on the Beatles. You would see photos of the parents. The parents would be a bit more up close, I think, if they were really in on it, if they were really pushing these guys to stardom. So I'm not buying the whole mind control program theory. Sorry, Mike, and I really have a lot of respect for the work you do on this, but I'm not buying that theory. I mean, I could buy, like, when it comes to this mind control, was it MK Ultra they call it? I could buy that when it comes to, like, like the Mickey Mouse Club. There's that club when the Britney Spears was part of that. Christina Aguilera, Justin Timberlake, they were all part of that when they were young kids. I could believe that there was a lot of that mind control stuff going on there, and obviously you see the problems that Britney Spears has had, and her meltdown, especially the one she had about 15 years ago when she shaved her head bald, you know what I mean, and all that stuff that was going on with her dad. He was trying to control almost every aspect of her life. And, I think Christina Aguilera has even had some problems with alcohol. Justin Timberlake, I think for a while was maybe a bit of issue with alcohol and a bit of a pothead, into smoking weed a lot. So, these guys have had their problems, and a lot of that maybe does come to that, it's the pushy parents, it's the showbiz parents type, and then it's when they get in this environment, when it's they're trying to, the parents are really grooming their kids for the success and fame. But then they get into this environment when they're around other adults, and they're the ones that are, molding them, shaping them to be these pop stars, and there could be all sorts of weird, fucked up shit going on. So I can believe more of the mind control stuff for that, more from like whatever it was, the 80s and the 90s with these kids, but not from going back to the 1950s with these working class Liverpool lads. Nah, I can't buy that. But the thing is, I'm talking about, the Tavistock Institute. Now, I'm just going to get this up here, but, because, the title of this video, did Tavistock create the Beatles? And this is about the Tavistock Institute here. The Tavistock Institute was founded in London in 1946 with the aid of a grant from the Rockefeller Foundation. It is a not-for-profit think tank, policy and consulting organisation. And there's also something else here about Tavistock. It has the independence of being entirely self-financing with no subsidies from the government or other sources. And I think really, with this Tavistock Institute, it was really that there was really an agenda there to really, to alter things within, the culture. And the way that they were going to achieve that was through music. In the music industry, and slight changes were being made. You had Elvis, and he was really, when he was doing all the dancing and all the hip gyrations at the time, that was very cutting edge in the mid to late 50s. But now, you had now with the Beatles, and the thing with the Beatles, I mean, there definitely had to be a bit of an agenda there. I believe definitely there was an agenda there with if there's this institute there. I could believe that definitely there would have been an agenda with bringing these guys in and to shape, and it's. I mean, I just know, like, from. I think it was the Hard Day's Night film, and isn't it like one of the words that they like to use a lot is gear? It's about, gear this, gear that. Get a lot of gear. Which, and the thing about gear is slang for drugs, But obviously they're not referring to drugs when they say gear. I think they're just saying, like, get this gear, like this stuff here, look at this. This is, really cool. But I think there had to be an agenda that certain people knew what they were doing. And I mean, a lot of stuff changed, throughout the culture in the 60s. I mean, a lot of stuff changed from, But, from about 62 to up until, 69, a lot of stuff changed in the culture. There was the whole Summer of Love hippie movement, and was it homosexuality all of a sudden was decriminalized? Was it in America and England? I think it was around 1967. I mean, a lot of stuff changed, which I don't know, all these changes would have been made, with all this, when rock, the whole rock and roll boom, and obviously, Beatlemania. I mean, just the impact that they had on the culture, it's something else. But the thing is, obviously, I mean, there's the different theories there with the Beatles. There's the whole theory, there's this theory, I mean, did they even write their own songs? I mean, and I think, the one thing I've noticed that Mike from his videos was that there's a Merseybeat article. There was a Merseybeat article, August 1962, and it was just when they'd kicked Pete Best out of the band and replaced him with Ringo, and then they were going to go down to London, I think I believe it would have been London, yeah, to the EMI and record songs with the producer George Martin, and it said in this article that they're going to be recording songs specifically written for them. So nothing about, any recording songs that John Lennon and Paul McCartney wrote. No, they were recording songs specifically written for them. Now, there's one thing you could say about this, is that at that point, they weren't, George Martin wasn't aware that John Lennon and Paul McCartney did write songs. And what you got to remember is that back then it was so rare for other artists, for people who were artists, recording artists, to be songwriters as well. There wasn't a lot back then, and I'm not super clued up in all the music and all the who the people the top recording artists were from the early '60s. But I mean, what was it? Buddy Holly wrote some songs. The Everly Brothers wrote some songs. But they a lot of their stuff, though, at the same time when they started, that they had people writing for them. So it was quite I suppose you could say a cutting edge thing when all of a sudden bands, and we're glad to believe that the Beatles were writing their own stuff, but at the same time, at the time the Beatles started out doing a lot of cover songs on their albums. I mean, Hard Day's Night was the first album, I think, when they had allegedly, they wrote all of their songs. I think they had 14 songs on that album. So, and I think the 2-3 albums they had before Hard Day's Night, it was like half cover songs, and then it was like half, Lennon McCartney songs. That's what we're led to believe. We're allowed to. That's what we're expected to believe that. But I mean, you don't know for sure. I mean, you don't know. And this is the thing. This is the thing, though. This is the one thing that made, when I heard this made me say, maybe there's something to these theories. Maybe there is something to these theories. It was Ringo. He was being interviewed on that anthology documentary, and this was, I think, that anthology documentary came out, I think it was in 1994, 1995, and Ringo was talking, I think it was when things were kind of starting to change around 1965, and they were maybe getting a little bit tired of all the touring they were doing, all the travelling. This was maybe around the time of the Shea Stadium gig, or maybe just after the Shea Stadium gig. And Ringo says, and he was kind of just implying, and I remember the In My Life song is playing in the back as he's talking, and he was saying that things were changing. And I think he was saying that drugs might have been the reason, part of the reason for that. And this is it, quote, he said, and the writers were now writing different stuff. And because the writers were now writing different stuff, We were all playing differently. We were expanding. That's more or less a quote. I almost put that verbatim. So that that was the thing there that made me just say, wow, maybe there is something to this theory about the Beatles not writing their own songs. That, because I thought, and I was thinking to myself when I when I saw this, I'd first heard Mike say that, or it was somebody that was speaking to Mike say this whole thing about Ringo saying about the writers. And when I first heard that, I hadn't heard the Ringo say it himself. I was thinking to myself, is this just Ringo being a smart arse? Because I've seen interviews that Ringo does before, and Ringo can be a little bit of a smart arse. I think all the Beatles could be smart asses in their own way, that when they would answer questions and they do these press conferences, and sometimes, especially maybe some of the American press conferences, and they could just get asked these stupid questions, so they give these ridiculous answers. But the thing about it is, when Ringo, when he's talking, it's not like when Ringo says this, Ringo is doing he's got like a little, kind of like a ha-ha, wink-wink kind of face. It's nothing changes, and his facial expressions don't change at all. There's no little smile. There's no that little I'm being tongue-in-cheek here. There was none of that. It was just talking like normal. Yeah, that Ringo more or less said, and the writers were now writing different stuff, and now we were playing differently. That's what he said. You will find that quote, I'm sure. You do some digging, you do look up the Beatles on YouTube. I mean, you'll find that. And then there's a few other things. I mean, one other theory, it's the Rubber Soul album. And the Rubber Soul album, apparently it was recorded, I think it was 30 days they're saying it was recorded. It was the 11th of October to the 11th of November. And I think that's the thing, the whole thing of this idea of a song, of 14 songs being recorded just in 30 days, like they were starting from scratch. That just seems like there wouldn't be really enough time to get all the songs done. And then it's not just getting all the songs complete, it's then you got to get the records out. There's all, the whole manufacturing. Because I think from the videos I've watched from Mike, and he seems to know his stuff, and he talks to other people who really know their shit, is that it would have taken about 6 to 8 weeks for all that, for the whole manufacturing process. But with Rubber Soul, though, it was released less than about, it was around three weeks, not even 4 weeks later. So that's a little bit fishy, if you ask me.